Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for being here. If you are a breastfeeding mama, the chances are that you are waking up once, if not twice, if not several times a night to nurse your baby. And this video is going to be sharing with you my top 3 tips on how you can have a more restful night and help your baby get back to sleep after nursing sessions as quickly as possible so that you wake up being a brighter, more energized, better version of yourself, because caffeine will only get you so far. If this is your first time being here, thank you so much for joining me. I cover all things trying to conceive, pregnancy, birth, breastfeeding and infant feeding, as well as some parenting hacks and tips and tricks. I hope that you will stick around for my next video, and if you don't want to miss it, make sure and hit the subscribe button, but also that little notification bell down below. Let's dive right into my nighttime tips for breastfeeding mamas. Okay, so tip number 1 might sound like something that's a little bit out there, but in fact, just as is with everything that I draw upon and relay to you guys on my Instagram channel or Instagram page, but also on my YouTube channel, this is evidence-based, and actually this guidance comes from the Academy of Breastfeeding Medicine, and that is to not wind your baby after feeds. And the reason for this is because our babies, generally what happens when we wake them up to wind them or to change their nappy, they become roused, they become alert, and they need to be fed again. And so when our little ones are feeding at nighttime, not only do they require less winding because they feed in a more relaxed, settled way, in a nice relaxed pattern, and are less likely to take in extra air, but also our milk supply is regulated to slow down at nighttime, so they manage it all a lot better, so they don't need to be winded in the same way. If you are needing to wind your baby at nighttime, it's worthwhile looking at their latch and their attachment at the breast, but also looking at winding them in a really gentle way. I'm going to be doing a video next week all about my favorite winding technique, the wonky winding technique, so keep your eyes peeled for that one. So tip number 1 would be to avoid winding your baby at nighttime. The big reason that I prefer to not do this, aside from just making your baby more alert and awake and having more difficulty then settling them back to sleep, is that we sometimes end up in this trap, this cycle of nursing our baby, winding our baby, they become more awake, sometimes they'll do a little bit of a puke, and then they'll want to go back on the breast again. And then they finish on the breast, we pop them up, we wind them again, we wake them again, they maybe do a little puke and they need to feed again, so they go back on the breast again. If your baby nurses very well, comes away from the breast full, satiated and happy, leave them just as they are. Don't wake a sleeping baby. So our tip number 2 goes right along with that don't wind your baby unless it's totally necessary, and that is to avoid changing your baby's nappy unless your baby's done a poo. Number 2, they have peed through their diaper or nappy and have wet clothes. Of course, we don't want them to be lying in wet clothes. If they haven't done either of those things, it's just pee, leave them in their nappy overnight. If you're worried about your baby's skin, just put a nice barrier cream on their bottom and wait to change that nappy until the morning. Same goes for winding. If you are waking your baby after a feed by changing their nappy, they will then look to go back onto the breast, and then you're starting that cycle again. You want to be having as gentle, as peaceful, as calm an evening or a nighttime as you possibly can, and so avoiding waking your baby in these scenarios is as important as can be. So now that we've looked at ways that we can avoid wakefulness for our babies at nighttime, so avoiding excessive nappy changes and avoiding any winding that's not totally necessary, we want to be looking at how can we get ourselves back to sleep as quickly as possible. Here are some of the obvious ones. Avoid any blue light at nighttime. This means any kind of harsh, abrasive night lights that you might be turning on to maybe make sure that you're watching for your latch or keeping an eye on how your baby is nursing, on position and that kind of thing. It might mean instead of having a really harsh, abrasive light, that instead you maybe leave some of your little LED candles out that you maybe used for your birth space. Some of those warm lights like a salt lamp or an orange light bulb inside your little reading light can be really, really helpful. You could of course get some really cute little like egg-shaped lights that are really helpful for those night feeds too, but avoiding blue light. Similarly, along that same vein of avoiding blue light, you want to be avoiding looking at your phone. And this is a huge one. And in those early days, I was absolutely one of those mamas that I would be like trying to log everything and like checking just how many times I've woken during the night and how close is it to morning time and who else could possibly be awake at this hour. And even at times I've gone on and done some like online shopping in the middle of the night. 3 a.m. is not your time for that. And the reason for that is that blue light, the light that it emits from your phone, sends a message to your body that says it is time for wakefulness, it's time for alertness, and it's not time for sleep. And so when we're hoping to drop back off to sleep after nursing our babies, it can make it that little bit more difficult. So avoid any blue light. Try to stick to kind of warm orange hued lights and light bulbs if you can, and avoid your phone if at all possible. Just don't check the time. It makes a heap of difference, I promise. And then last but not least is going to be a bit of a controversial tip, but that is to have your baby in the bed with you. We are huge fans of bed sharing, co-sleeping, family bed situations in this family. And for us, it has made a huge difference to how much rest and sleep that I get. The first reason is that instead of having to like get up to go to the other side of the room to get my baby from the cot to then go back to bed or sit in a nursing chair, I don't have to do any movement at all. All I have to do once I'm wearing nursing friendly pajamas or a nightdress is whip out a boob, roll over and nurse my baby. If your baby's in a sidecar or side cot, you might have to bring them closer to you. You might have to shimmy over to them. But if your baby is co-sleeping in the actual bed with you, you can sleep in that little cuddle curl position. I'm going to attach a little PDF document that shows a really lovely illustration that I have made up, showing you the Safe Sleep 7, so that you can make sure that you are bed sharing safely with your little one. And along with that tip of that cuddle curl position and safe bed sharing and co-sleeping, we want to be looking at nailing that side lying feeding position. And this is just one of the things that I touch on in my Preparing to Breastfeed course and workshop that I will leave the link to down below. You can also purchase a recording if you're afraid that you're not going to make the live event. But we talk about all these different positions and holds and postures so that you can have the easiest breastfeeding journey possible. And side-lying feeding is one of my favorites because it means that you can safely close your eyes and fall asleep while you're nursing your little one. And of course, we know that as we're nursing our baby, we're getting this letdown, that milk ejection reflex, that milk spray, typically between 2 and 3 per breast per feed. And with that milk spray, we have that letdown of oxytocin and dopamine that floods our brain. And of course, one of the lovely feelings that comes with that connection, that bondedness and that love hormone is a feeling of sleepiness, because it helps not only us to go back to sleep, but the increased levels of those hormones, melatonin and catecholamines in our breast milk help our babies to go back to sleep. In those early days, our babies don't have established circadian rhythms, so they rely on ours, which is displayed through our breast milk. So those night feeds are so important, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Hold your baby close, follow their cues, and enjoy nursing your baby. These days will feel long and the nights will feel long, but those years are so short. And I hope that I can be here to help you feel more supported and educated on this breastfeeding journey. If you're struggling, do reach out for help sooner rather than later. I will leave the way that you can contact me in the description box down below.